Alright, so after hours and hours of therapy, I've finally come to grips with Berserk Volumes 1 through 3, and I'm ready to dive into Volumes 4 through 13, the Golden Age arc. How bad can it be?
6.5 hours later.
Oh my god! Yes, the Berserk Golden Age arc. Now this was something that a lot of you out there wanted me to review. You guys really wanted me to cover what is regarded by a lot of fans as one of the greatest manga runs and chapters of all time. This is covering the origin of Guts, the origin of the Band of the Hawk, the origin of Griffith, the origin of basically how the world got to where it is at the beginning of the first 3 volumes of this manga. What Kentaro Miura does here, the mangaka of this book, is that he really fleshes out the characters and the universe, especially characters. This is surprisingly a very, very heavy character-driven book. Now, I had heard a lot about Berserk, and I had heard a lot of fans say, man, it's full of blood, it's full of guts, it's full of gore, it's really brutal, it's really vicious. And I thought, okay, well, you know, it's probably a book that has violence for the sake of violence. That is not the case here. Every single battle, every single war, every single skirmish that happens in Berserk has weight to it, and the consequences are felt, especially along the characters of Griffith, Casca, and Guts. Speaking of Griffith, let's talk about this guy. This guy is hands down going to go down in my book as one of the best villains of not only manga, of any fiction that I've ever read. Griffith is a monster. Now, I've heard that there are some kind of redeeming qualities about him later on in the series. Have not gotten that far yet, but suffice to say, in these volumes you discover Griffith, and Kentaro, what he does is he is a sly bastard. The mangaka of this is sly as hell, because he makes you fall in love with Griffith the same time that Guts and Casca are. He really makes you love the character, and he really makes you understand where he's coming from, where his position is, his kind of obsession with power, and how far he's really willing to go to get what he wants to get. Griffith is a character that his motives are set in stone. He wants something, and he is willing to sacrifice every single person that comes in his way, and in a lot of cases, people that are on his side to get what he wants. At the same time, it's this lofty motivation and his goals that really draw us into the character and really make us fall in love with him. Not only is he dedicated to what he wants to get, he's intelligent, he's a badass fighter, and he holds his gang, the Band of the Hawks, together single-handedly. I think what's really impressive is just how well Kentaro Miura is able to pull you in, and he really does make you feel like you're a member of the Band of the Hawk. It's the little moments where they're sitting around a campfire and they're telling stories, and you're getting little bits of dialogue, little bits of information of characters' origins, their motivations, things like that. It really pulls you in, and it kind of feels like you're sitting right there. You're right next to every single member, sitting on a log as you're listening to these stories, and I love that. I really love the slow moments in here because I'm a dialogue junkie. I love bits of dialogue that flesh out characters, and these 8 volumes, correct? 8, 9, 10? Okay. 10 volumes of this manga are full of that stuff. Now, I'm gonna put a warning right now because I really feel like I cannot get into the meat of Berserk without getting into the spoiler section. So I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm going to go into spoilers, guys. For those of you that are wondering what my final verdict is on the Golden Age, it's definitely a perfect. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best mangas I've ever read, one of the best pieces of fiction that I've ever read. It's a masterstroke in writing and in craftsmanship. It's absolutely brilliant, hands down. If you are a manga fan, if you know what, if you are even a slight bit of a fan of Dark Souls, or if you are even a slight bit of a fan of great storytelling and you can handle the violence, and buyer beware, there is plenty of violence, and there are moments of rape, so I'm warning you right now, it's very brutal stuff. It's not for younger readers, but if you can handle that stuff, and I mean really, really hardcore stuff, this is a perfect. It's a solid, perfect. It's about as perfect as it can get. Now, if you are somebody that cannot handle that, if you're not really into that type of stuff, I'd say give it a borrow. Check it out. Borrow it from one of your friends. Get it from your library or something like that. But if you can handle it, like I said, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So with that said, let's talk spoilers. So I'm not gonna lie, around volume 8, the book took a bit of a dive for me. It wasn't terrible by any stretch of the imagination, it was just that it kind of slogged a bit. And then you start getting into volume 9, where Kentaro is essentially setting up his endgame for this arc. And what I mean by that is that eventually Griffith ends up being captured because he slept with the king's daughter. That was a bad move. And he is tortured for the span of a year. This was brutal. This was really hard to read because of the fact that once you get to that point, you really are in love with Griffith. You love the character, you think he's badass, you think he's really awesome. And then you see the state that he's in, where his tongue is cut out, he's emaciated, his tendons have been cut out so he can't really walk, he can't really go anywhere. And they rescue him, yeah, but he is a shell of a former man, and he's really a shell of the once great warrior that you knew, and it kind of breaks your heart a little bit. And then you get to volume 12. Now, the previous 2 volumes, you know, you're feeling bad for Griffith, all of his warriors are dying for him, they're trying to help him out, and then you get to volume 12, and he goes full demon. And it was, without a doubt, one of the most shocking and fucked up things that I've seen in a long time. You see, folks, for the first 11 volumes, you're getting hints of how good Kentaro really is as a mangaka. And then you get through 12 and 13. 12 and 13 is the end of the Golden Age arc, and it's really where Kentaro gets to shine. It's like the guy was saving all of his juices for 12 and 13, because Griffith is starting to transform into this demon, and all of the Band of the Hawk, they're pulled into this world, and they are used as human sacrifices. And this seems like really what Kentaro was going for from the start. This seems like he reached this volume, volume 12, and he said, okay, awesome, now I get to play. The level of craftsmanship and skill in 12 and 13, in terms of design, in terms of scale, in terms of technicality, is just insane. It really is. Just the amount of demons, the amount of different creatures that are surrounding the Band of the Hawk, seeing all of these people getting slaughtered in the most tragic ways, and your heart is being broken because you've spent the past 11 volumes getting to know every single one of these characters, and then they get to Casca, which is without a shadow of a doubt one of the most tragic figures I've ever read in a manga or in an anime, watched in an anime, any form of fiction. One of the most tragic figures. And I'm gonna say something, guys, and please don't take this against me. I think based upon how they leave the character of Casca, I was actually talking to Riley about this, I kind of would have rather have seen her die. I'm not going to get into too many details of how she's left at the end of this volume, but suffice to say, I would have rather have seen her die. I'm sure you noticed I really haven't talked too much about the character of Guts, and it's really interesting to see how he goes from this little child that was raised by a bunch of mercenaries and all the tragic things that happened to him as he was as a child, to being this really decorated warrior and eventually becoming the Black Swordsman. It's fascinating. It's such a great transition. Now, I will say that there are certain beats that the Guts that we see when he transforms from a child to an adult don't really align with the Guts in the first 3 volumes that we get, and I understand why. Kentaro was just kind of throwing things at the wall, seeing what stuck when he first started his first 3 volumes, and then he really got into the meat of it. He started developing the character more. That's typical for a writer, but it's still such a fascinating transition and such a fascinating transformation to watch before your very eyes that it was one of the highlights of reading this book. Okay, so let's talk about the art. I've mentioned it already how great it really is, but guys, it's Phenomenal stuff, really. There's so much creativity here, from the armor designs, from the character designs, from the demon designs, from the way that the buildings are drawn. It's fantastic stuff. It really is. There's not much else to say about it. I really was looking for bad things to say in the art, and the fact is, he gets better as he goes. Kentaro gets so much better as he goes, and it's crazy to see how impressive his art was in Volume 3, and then you see how impressive his art is in Volume 13 when Griffith is born, and it's on another scale. It's absolutely beautiful stuff in the most grotesque way. I can see now why Miyazaki, the creator of Dark Souls, really took a lot of influence from this art style. It just makes sense. It's gorgeous, but at the same time, it's horrifying, it's disgusting, and it just sends shivers down your spine. There's one particular creature in this book where she comes in dressed up as a woman, and then you actually see what she looks like. It's terrifying. Look, folks, I've been doing this for about 5 years now, and I've read all kinds of great stuff. But Berserk is going in my top 5, just for this arc alone. Granted, I've heard it slows down a little bit after this particular arc. I have not read past this because I'm kind of taking a bit of a break, but it's in my top 5. It's phenomenal. It's stellar stuff. It's really brilliant. Like I mentioned earlier, if you can afford it, and if you can deal with the fact of all the things that I just mentioned, this is a must-read. It's perfect. It's fantastic. It's one of the best manga that I've ever read. It's one of the best works of fiction that I ever read for a good reason, and I highly recommend you go check this out. Really, you do deserve to read this series. Pick up the first 13 volumes, like I said, with the Golden Age arc starting at Volume 4, and you won't be disappointed. It's one of the best stories that I've ever read. It's just beyond words, and now I'm just gushing about it like I have been this entire video. I really couldn't find anything to really say that was at fault, except for the fact that there was a bit of a lull around Volume 8, and then it quickly bounces back into one of the best things that I've ever read. So with that said, guys, if this is your first time checking out my channel, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. It's found in the description below. Patreon is found down there as well. There's going to be tons of content that's exclusive there as well. Thanks, guys, for checking this out. Let me know what you thought of the Golden Age arc if you've read it already in the comment section down below. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Come on, it's down in the description. Do it. I love you guys. Have a great week. Bye.